Now things are fixed. Testing mic one, mic one, one. Chat testing mic one, one, two, one, two, one, two. I, I, I wonder if I use this. Can I? I'm gonna draw. Oh, what? Since I'm drawing in red. We not play too much. We not play around too much. Let me actually make sure all the scenes work properly. Cause we just updated OBS and everything. Kind of destroyed a lot of things. Mm. We not just me looking at my like headshot right there. Actually, let's change the lens. Actually, and let's change the scene. What up, y'all? And the verticals are not. This is how we start out. There we go. Okay. What's up, everybody? As I change lenses, yo, I look greasy. I look ultra greasy. You need to do a sound check as well. I look ultra mega greasy. You look like a greaser. You greaser. Sound check, sound check. Other than like doing my sound check, how's everybody doing? You know, Twitch just rolled out the M. Everybody, you know, monetize. Everybody get them subs. Everybody get their subs up. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Now we is doing it to be doing it because we do it. Because we just be doing it. You know what I'm saying? We be doing it. Do it. All my peoples out there, you know what I'm saying? Get your monies up. Get them subs up. Them subbies. Damn, I gotta relog. I gotta log into my Twitch all over again. What the frick? We lit though. We're celebrating 1 year of DJ's category with a gift for you. 15 minutes of watching Andy animated emote through. 8. Oh, and today is also my dad's birthday. So, oh, I get to use story now? Let go. Let go. Testing. Testing. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Alright, alright. So everything sound good. Alright, chat. We lit. We stupid lit. Give it up. Give it up to all of us and all of you. Switch out these lenses. Oh, I probably shouldn't do it. I don't need that lens right now. So, over 25. I cranked the ISO too much? I might. It's too much. 32. And you know what? Where's my light source? I was charging it, wasn't I? I wasn't. I wasn't. Strange. Crazy. I mean, what you doing, bro? What you doing, bro? What you doing, bro? I don't know. I don't know. Really, truly. I could charge it and use it right here. My bad, y'all. My bad. Man's was all, riled up and excited about shit. Oh, I'm old. Okay. This is too much. Too much, too much, too much. When I get close, it's actually dark on. Anyway, y'all don't really care about all that. Y'all don't care about all that. Why? Because y'all have a whole another front camera. So why do y'all don't need two front profiles? Y'all can get a side profile, or I can manage everything a little bit more. Now look at that monitor over there anyway. I like this. I like that. I can easily just turn this and get the light. And I can actually turn this to auto. Cancel. I want continuous focus, please. I'm so my bad. I'm getting annoyed. I get quickly annoyed with fixing lighting stuff now. Lighting is so key to like filmmaking. It's insane. But anyway, back to y'all's regular broadcasted Ray as he gets all his other gear nicely put away. Because I like to have everything nice, organized, as y'all can kind of see, or particularly can't see. I like a nice clean desk setup. There might be a lot of stuff, but it's organized stuff. If you get what I'm saying. Which if y'all didn't, y'all would say so. And if you cared, yeah, if you cared, then yeah, yeah, but great. My work hard drive. Shoot, goodness. Where's that short USB-C cord I was using? Dun, 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 dun. I found it. I found that shit. Found that shit. Oh yeah. Yo, my mind though. My mind. My question is, did it actually work? Work? That's my work hard drive actually. Okay, that's why I was not using it. That's why I was using the red cord. Huh. No, but does this work to that though? My next question. Is my seed hard drive actually? It could be that it's just, it needs to be connected to the actual computer. Because I'm using an actual hub to actually connect. I'm running out of space. We're running out of outlets for all the USB-C ports on the actual laptop. So that's why that is why I always have backup cords for everything. For everything. Everything. Everything? Everything. As my brother says. Everything. Backups. Everything. It's getting annoying. It's getting hella annoying when he says that, and it's so true, and I have to hear it in the back of my head. For everything. It's like, yo, for everything, everything. It's like, no. No. But yeah. But yeah. Ramblings with Ray. Ramblings with Ray. So I get other things organized. Also, I did not, I got to update a lot of the drones. I got to test fly and figure out if there was any issues. I found some issues. The Avada's controller has some weird thing. I'm still trying to figure it out. Me and my brother are gonna walk through it sometime today. Also, like I said, today's my father's birthday. My mom's birthday is also coming up. I don't know why I'm really organizing it. I'm just happy. I'm happy about a lot of things. Like, oh, y'all, did y'all see the new content that I dropped today? Like, I learned some green screen aspects of stuff, the off stream, like out of OBS. Because, like, everything y'all see me do with OBS or do on stream is done through OBS. Now I'm trying to learn it where I can do it with my actual content, off stream content. Like production. Production Ray. That's what we're working up to. Working up to, we are. We are production Ray. What's up? What's up, Tom? I see you. I definitely see you over there, bro. You can stay over there. But Oh yeah, I'm just wilding, y'all. Just mind me. Just mind me. Uh, I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. And now that we got that there, oh, we didn't even start up um Instagram. Necessarily, we don't need to. We don't need to. We everywhere else type shit. We working on stuff type stuff, but we testing stuff type shit. So we just gonna work with what we doing. As what we doing. You know what I'm saying? Said, said, it was done. It was said and it was done. That's so cool. I got all kinds of new little like emotes, positive. Yeah, it crazy what we can do now. You know what I'm saying? Crazy. About to go crazy on the stream. Type shit. So while I go get some food real quick, I have this little video play out. What you mean about? Yeah? I'm sorry, y'all. We're cat, bro. Cat. Cat is a trip, bro. He knows it. He literally knows it. I got you. I got you. Chill.
Add background music to your videos in Adobe Premiere Pro. This is going to follow 6 simple steps. You don't want to skip any of them. You want to start by either dragging your background music onto your timeline in Adobe Premiere Pro for your project, or adding it to the project bin, and then you can drag it to the timeline from there. Once you have your music on the timeline, what you want to do is you want to match the music to the length of your video in many cases. So if you want to match it to your video or your clip, you're going to want to use the remix tool rather than just trying to cut this or extend the rate, which is going to alter the sound. The remix tool is going to be the third icon on your toolbar menu to the left of your timeline. It's going to be the fourth option. You're going to see the ripple edit, the rolling edit, and the rate stretch icon, and then the fourth one down will be the remix tool. You want to select that. With the remix tool selected, you want to go to the end of your audio track. You want to extend it to match the clip that you're trying to sync with on the timeline. If you want to fade your audio track in or out, you want to go to the beginning or the end of the audio track. You want to hover on it until you see a gray icon appear on your audio track. You're going to want to click on that and drag that in order to fade it in or out, depending on whether you're at the beginning or the end of the track. If you have a voice in your video content rather than just footage, you'll want to make sure that your background music is not overpowering the vocal track. There are two ways you can handle this. You could go to the Essential Sound panel in Adobe Premiere Pro, and you could go ahead and select the music type label, and then you'll get some options. Now you can apply auto ducking in one click, and you can choose to adjust this or to have it reset its keyframes so that it doesn't overpower the voice in your videos, and it will go ahead and bring the music back up to higher levels if there's a point in the video where there is not a voice track present. You can also auto duck to everything if you have other things in your different audio layers, including sound effects if you're doing more advanced sound design. There is an alternative method to this. If you go to the audio track mixer and you select the audio track that your music is on, you can adjust the slider there. I usually set it to -22 dB, somewhere in that range, and you just want to play this by ear, but if you adjust it, you can make sure that's not overpowering the voice in your video. And that is how you add background music in Adobe Premiere Pro. If you want to use copyright-free music in your YouTube videos, I definitely recommend Epidemic Sound. It's what I typically use. I'll give you my affiliate link in the description. But if you want to use copyright music without getting copyright strikes or claims in your videos, watch my tutorial on how to legally use copyright music in YouTube. Thanks so much. I'll catch you in the next video.
Imagine being able to build the tool you need just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one to platforms ready for many, from passion projects to enterprise-grade systems, everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation, where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality right now.
All right, so I've been a creator in video form for like 15 years, and if there's one thing I know about making higher quality videos, is that a lot of it is in the details. You get the fundamentals early, but the details make it better. Now, what if you run out of time for details? Like you spend 24 hours, let's say, on a video and then put it out, but you want to do even better than that? Sometimes adding help with parts of the video can take it to the next level. Let's say you spend 24 hours on a video and you spent that last hour on the thumbnail, for example. Well, what if while you were spending those 24 hours on the video, someone else was spending 24 hours on the thumbnail? Think of how much better that thumbnail and all of its details would be. And so I've told this octopus analogy many times in my history as a creator, which is basically when you start, you've got all these arms doing all these things, and all of them have like a brain attached to them essentially. But as you build a team, you kind of cut off one of the arms and hand it to someone for them to do full time, and they can do it way better than you ever could. It's such a great unlocker. So in this video, we're going to be meeting all the different pieces of the team that take us from scripting all the way till the end, and you'll actually meet the newest addition, the newest arm of the team. But there's also something you should know about the octopus. So octopi are already pretty weird, but they also have 3 hearts. And this is a part of the analogy, because that's the part that's core to what the creator is. So they can't cut them off, they can't be delegated. That's different for every creator. My advice is always to find what that is as soon as you possibly can. But here, for example, it's things like being on camera in the reviews. It's actually reviewing the tech and testing and trying things out. And it's the editorial decision about what we make videos about. like making a channel that I would want to subscribe to and making videos that I would want to watch. That sort of overhead creative look. So even though I'm always going to be working on that stuff, the first part of any video is naturally a lot of the writing and brainstorming and research. So let's pass it to David. He can tell us more about storytelling.
Okay, so I get a lot of emails from people asking, how can I make a better script, or how can I write a better story? And really, no matter the kind of video you're trying to make, whether it's, I don't know, a review, maybe a retrospective video essay, or like a long form video, there are 2 or 3 things that you want to keep in mind. Number 1, have a thesis. Number 2, learn the context. And number 3, unearth all the details. So let's go ahead and break down 3 different types of videos so you can see how to apply these techniques to all different types of stories. Let's start with something that we do really often here at MKBHD, the review. Now, a review has a few very specific elements that it's gotta hit. So the point of a review is to test the company's claims, right? Can it do the things that the company said it could do? What are the glaring issues that you might want to be aware of? And where does it fit inside the rest of the market? Let's take the Humane AI Pin review as a fairly extreme example here. So with the Humane AI Pen, there was all this hype that was built up around it, right? There was this mysterious company that had been building this product for a long time that was launching. They finally announced the product, and there's people who are really excited for the AI features, and there's people that are really excited for the hardware features. But our job, when we're delivering a review, is to cut through all of that noise and actually let you know, is it any good? Can it actually do any of the things that they just promised? Like, you could make a video that says, oh, this is the engineering of the Humane AI Pin, which was really interesting in its own right. You could make a video about the AI model that runs the Humane AI Pin, but that's not a review. The point of a review is to focus on, does this deliver on what it says it is, and is it worth your money? Now, you can wrap up all of that information into a thesis, and that's what you kind of have to do to keep a video engaging, right? Like, so the thesis of the AI Pin review was,
actors, we can make you believe we know what we're doing, when in fact, we do not. Whoops, I have no idea what these buttons do.
I've never driven a stick in my life, but my heart is full yet!
Small business owner, because I have no idea what I'm doing. But GoDaddy Aero does, using AI to build a logo, website, and social content.
For Walton Goggins goggle glasses.
Because if your goggles ain't Goggins, they don't belong on your noggins. With GoDaddy Aero, it's like...
well,
We
none
had
of
to get
these
the
AI
stove
hardware
cooking.
products are
We had to get
even
the
really
stove
working yet,
cooking.
so no, they're not
Dang.
really worth buying. Now, once you have that thesis of AI products not being ready yet, you can kind of like center your review around that, right? You have your thesis, and then you give a bunch of different points that prove that thesis. Now, having a thesis or a story or a point to your video doesn't just apply to reviews. It actually applies to pretty much any kind of video you want to make. Like, take, for example, the video essay, a very popular style of video on YouTube right now. There's a lot of different really creative ways to do a video essay, but something that I personally like to do is to give the audience a ton of context for everything that's leading up to this point that I'm trying to make, so that maybe you can care about this as much as I do. So let's use this video I wrote with Marquez as an example. This video was called Apple versus the Paradox of Choice, and it came out pretty much right after the AirTags came out. To someone who's not like super plugged into the tech space, you might have just seen that Apple just decided to release these tracking tags called AirTags, and then some other tracking company got kind of upset at them and decided to sue them for it. But it's only when you understand the context of exactly what happened and what this space looks like that you can actually start to unravel the story. You can go watch that video to kind of get the whole story, but this is my segment, so I get to talk about the context. So basically what happened is Apple releases the AirTags. Tile had already had this ecosystem of Tile tags, and that ecosystem relies on Tile tags in order to actually make the tracking system work. But Apple, who has the iPhone that the Tile connects to, just decided that they were going to release the AirTags into the Find My ecosystem. But only when you really understand this ecosystem and also the context of what's happening here, do you understand the paradox. And the paradox is that if Tile joins Find My, they are diminishing their own ecosystem. But if they don't join Find My, then Apple wins. There are a ton of little stories kind of baked in here, and those are all articles that probably got written, but really understanding the entire story by consuming as much information about a subject as you can, do you really start to see the wider story that might not be as obvious. Now, I do generally consider the video essay kind of the hardest style of video to make because you have to come up with really unique ideas, and having a unique idea is probably the hardest thing you can possibly do. But the best way to train yourself to come up with these unique ideas is just to immerse yourself in that kind of content. Look for different stories, talk to your friends about this kind of stuff, talk to your parents, just rant as much as you can and consume as much as you can about a specific subject and get to know it inside and out. And that's when some of those bigger stories will kind of like light up in your brain. The last style of content we're gonna look at is those like documentary style, over 1 hour kind of videos. And it seems really scary because they're really big, but it's actually not as complicated as you think. All right, for this one, we're gonna use our Boosted to Busted, the rise and fall of boosted boards episode that we did on Waveform a couple of years ago. It's audio only. If you haven't listened to it yet, make sure you go listen to it. Kind of similar to the video essay, you already know where the story is going, right? So a lot of that story is actually gonna come out in the research process. For this project, we already know where we ended up, right? Boosted boards went out of business. And what we're trying to figure out is why. Now you could just Google these questions and kind of get broad strokes answers, but the storytelling, the thing that really keeps you engrossed in the story, is in the details. And in order to get those details, you want to talk to as many primary sources as you can. So I started reaching out via...
Check this out. In just a sec, I'm gonna speak with a different accent. And just between you and me, I don't really know how. But okay.
Here's the thing about filming yourself. It's one of the most important skills you can have and learn as a content creator, but nobody really teaches you how to do it properly. I went to film school for 3 years. I learned everything about filmmaking, cinematography, and the whole deal. But do you know what they never taught me? How to both be the filmmaker and the person in front of the camera. When I started my content agency and needed to promote my work daily, I quickly realized I had a problem. I was always the guy behind the camera, never in front of it. And if I wanted to build a consistent online presence, I had to figure this out. So today I'm gonna show you exactly how I learned to film myself, so you can create professional looking content without needing a camera crew. Look, when I first started posting content for my agency, I had a friend that went to film school with me and we used to shoot content all the time. But here's the reality. He wasn't available all the time and I needed to post daily and I couldn't rely on someone else's schedule. And that's when it hit me. If I wanted to be consistent with my content, if I wanted to build a business properly, I had to learn how to film myself. The problem was I had never done it. I used to be the director who directed other people, not being the talent in front of the camera. It was honestly pretty awkward at first, but I had to just figure it out. And once I did, it was a complete game changer. Not only did it allow me to build a huge audience and build trust with that audience, but also create a business that really stands out. And the first thing I want to talk about is gear. And before you think you need to spend a fortune on camera gear, let me tell you, you don't. I currently use the Sony FX3, which I'm filming with right now, and it's literally my favorite dream camera. I also have the Sony a7 IV with the Sigma 24-70 as my go-to lens. But here's the thing, I didn't start with the Sony FX3. I started with a Sony a7 III and it worked perfectly fine for me. For my daily vlogs and content, I actually use the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. The little guy is honestly my favorite piece of gear that most people overlook. It's tiny and the quality is just incredible on it. And it's perfect when you need to film yourself on the go because you can just bring it up and shoot whatever you want. For audio, I use the Shure SM7DB, which is this microphone that you're hearing right now. But when I'm shooting B-roll, I need something portable. I got the shotgun mic from Sony, the ECM-M1, which is perfect for talking head videos, vlogs, and everything that you need. The mic is honestly super good. But if I'm on the go and need something small, I have the DJI Virus Lav mic, and this is super handy, honestly. For tripods, believe me or not, I keep it super simple. I just have a filmmaking small rig tripod for my setup, studio setup right here, and on the go I use a GorillaPod, and this is very clutch because I can put it anywhere I want. But honestly, you can start with whatever camera you have, even your phone and a basic tripod. The gear doesn't make your content, knowing how to use it does. Now, here's what most people mess up,
Fact,
and that's
fact.
lighting. This is literally the most important thing that you need to nail if you want to make your content cinematic. In my studio, I have a Nanlite Forza 300B2, which is up here and you're seeing right now with a Nanlite softbox. And this is very handy because my setup is always ready to go. I just have to put on the light and press record. But if I'm not in my studio, I usually go with just a window light or a Nanlite tube light, which is very handy to act as a fill light, for example. Let me show you something very powerful. If you're in a room with a window, which most people have in their house, you shouldn't just pop the camera down. The placement actually matters where you place the camera and your subject. See, if I sit directly in front of the window, I'm completely blown out. But if I angle myself about 45 degrees to the window, now I'm getting this soft light that looks very cinematic and adds some shadows on my face that actually creates dimension. And the great thing about window light, it's free, and honestly it looks very good if you can position yourself correctly. The key is to always do a test shot first. I always record a just quick clip to make sure that my audio and lighting looks good before I start filming my actual content. And it's super important to get used to your gear and play around with it, because when you know your gear, it's gonna be much easier and you can actually rely on your setup and you're actually gonna know that your image is gonna look good. The third thing I wanna talk about is coverage. Here's something they don't tell you about filming yourself. You need multiple angles if you wanna make your content look professional. I'm not gonna lie, this honestly takes time, but it's the thing that separates amateur footage from actually professional looking content. You need 3 types of shots: the wide shots, the mid shots and the close-up shots. You want to show the environment and give people context about where you are and what you're doing. And for my talking head videos, I keep it super simple because my
That's what I'm
know
saying.
that
Talking
your
head needs
image
to be
to your
simple.
gear and play around with it, because when you know your gear, it's gonna be much easier and you can actually rely on your setup and you're actually gonna know that your image is gonna look good. The third thing I want to talk about is coverage. Here's something they don't tell you about filming yourself. You need multiple angles if you want to make your content look professional. I'm not gonna lie, this honestly takes time, but it's the thing that separates amateur footage from actually professional looking content. You need 3 types of shots: the wide shots, the mid shots and close-up shots. You want to show the environment and give people context about where you are and what you're doing. And for my talking head videos, I keep it super simple because my studio is always set up the same way. But for B-roll, I'm consistently moving the camera and taking different angles, and I usually use handheld or the GorillaPod for all of my B-roll shots. And the biggest time saver for me is having a studio ready to go all the time. I just need to put on the light, press record, and everything is on and ready to go. This doesn't just save time when filming, but also in the editing, because I can use the same templates and it's always gonna be the same lighting, and it just saves me a lot of time in color grading and editing overall. Speaking of saving time and creating better content, let me tell you about something that's been a game changer for video editors and content creators. Filming yourself is just one piece of the puzzle. If you're serious about turning your video skills into a real business, you need the right system and the community for that. And that's exactly why I created Agency Hub. It's our community specifically designed for video editors and creators who want to land their first 1 to 5K clients. Inside Agency Hub, you get the editing mastery training, personal branding framework and viral content templates, and a complete client acquisition system. Plus, we do weekly live coaching calls and you get access to a private community of 6-figure editors. And the best thing is you have a 7-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. Right now, Agency Hub is just $197, but the price is going up to $497 soon. If you're ready to turn your video skills into a real income, check out the link in the description below. Now, the fourth thing I want to talk about is storytelling. Every single movement, every single angle should have a reason behind it. If you're talking about something, show it. If you're moving the camera, there should be a motivation behind it. These are visual clues that tell your audience how to feel and what to pay attention to. I learned this in film school, but it applies just as much to content creation. Your visuals need to support the story, not distract from it. When I'm filming B-roll for my content, I'm always thinking about the story I'm telling. Am I showing my process or am I creating atmosphere? Each shot has a purpose. And the fifth thing I want to talk about is practical tips and mindset. Here's the thing, filming yourself is gonna feel very weird at first. Especially if you're like me and you used to be behind the camera and not in front of it. But you have to embrace the process. You're going to miss shots, you're going to have to re-record things. You might even have to wear the same outfit for multiple days because you're trying to get the perfect take. That's completely normal.
Okay, cool, because I'm wearing the same
I actually
shirt,
find
and I've
filming
been
myself
wearing
pretty relaxing
hoodie
now. I
over
put on
there
some
in
music,
between.
set up my shots, and then get into the flow
Pretty
state.
much it. I'm changing
Being
my
a content
boxes
creator
and
trying
all
to
that
grow your
other shit,
business
like
means
brushing my
being a
teeth, like,
problem
all that shit
solver.
definitely
There
got
will
me.
always be challenges, lighting issues, audio problem, equipment failures, but that's a part of the game. Find a system that works for you and then stick with it. For me, it's having a studio ready to go all the time. That's a game changer for me. So figure out what your system is. Look, learning to film yourself isn't about creating content. It's about building independence and consistency in your business. Whether you're promoting your services, building your personal brand, or just documenting your life, these skills will serve you forever. Starting is simple, focus on lighting, getting multiple angles, and don't be afraid to experiment. If you want to take your video skills to the next level and start landing real clients, definitely check out Agency Hub. The link is down in the description, and remember, the price is going up very soon. Thanks for watching, and with that being said, it's time to get back to work.
Right.
Every story begins somewhere.
Get back to it. Drop it.
What is it about Hollywood movies that draws the audience into the shots? Of course, cameras, lenses, lighting, and performance play a major part, but at the core of a great shot lies a great composition. So in this video, we'll look into the art of composition and find out how it can help you become a better filmmaker. I'll show you 7 cinematic composition techniques used by some of the best Hollywood filmmakers. These are things you can start applying to your own work right now and bring a whole new level of creativity to your filmmaking. Composition is the way elements of a scene are arranged within the camera frame. In a nutshell, what is in the frame and where is it located? And although that sounds very simple, a certain frame or a thought-out composition can draw you into the story, make it more impactful, and make something appear more cinematic. It's all about directing the viewer's eye. Let's begin with one of the most essential elements of composition, focal points. Focal points or points of interest can be used to draw the attention of your viewer to a specific part of the frame. Where does your eye naturally get drawn to in this shot? The composition of the shot pulls your attention to the focal point. Focal points are highly effective in wide shots. Filmmakers often opt for a minimal shot to eliminate any distractions. This directs the viewer's eyes straight to the focal point. But even in busier frames, when your frame has a dominant subject or focal point, the audience will know exactly where to look and what is important in the shot. Usually these focal points are used together with other compositional guidelines such as the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is one of the most common and important compositional guidelines that you'll find in cinematography. This rule breaks your frame into thirds with 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. The 4 intersecting points of these lines are fantastic areas of the frame to place your subject or focal point. This is because the viewer's eyes are naturally drawn to these points, and it will create a much more appealing shot. Just watch any Hollywood movie and you'll notice that the main subjects are almost always placed on one of these points. But you'll also see focal points placed on other compositional techniques such as the golden triangle. Here, a diagonal is drawn from one corner of the frame to the other, and then lines from the other 2 corners towards that line. This creates 2 balanced focal points within a shot. Framing the subject in the center of the shot can communicate that this is a person of authority, but it also works great when the person is talking directly into the camera. for teaching or informing the viewer about something. Like right now when I'm talking to you guys.
I have back-to-back meetings, I can't find my notes, and I haven't had coffee.
Man, I wouldn't want to be you.
Who are you? I'm you. Future you. The one who uses Otter, the AI meeting agent that live transcribes meetings and creates automated summaries. Oh no, does AI take our job? Nope, just our stress. Frees you up so you could do what you love. Mixology for mocktails. Oh, we love those. Hey, what are we prepping for, bud? I'm planning.
Another technique to pull the viewer's attention to your subject or help your storytelling is the use of leading lines. Simply put, leading chaotic lines can convey a sense of confusion or disorder in a scene. So leading lines not only help the look of your shot, but also improve your storytelling. Also, the distribution of space within a frame is important for the story you're trying to tell or the emotion you're trying to create. Positive space is the area in the frame given to the subject, and negative space is the empty space around them. The relationship between these two can create different moods within a shot or a scene. If the subject is larger in the frame, it can be a sign of how important they are. Extremely wide shots with lots of negative space can represent the subject's isolation or vulnerability and make them feel smaller. Extreme close-ups where the subject takes up almost the entire frame can show their power, but also draw you into their emotions. The position of this negative space can also have an effect on the feeling of a shot, which brings us to headroom and looking room. Headroom is the amount of negative space above a subject's head. Usually headroom is kept to a minimum. Lead room or looking room is the amount of negative space in front of the subject. This is usually more than the amount of negative space behind the subject. Also here, the rule of thirds can be of help. Placing your subject's eyes on an intersecting point of the rule of thirds will almost always give you the perfect headroom and lead room. You will also see this being applied when a subject is moving. There will be lead room, usually 2/3 of the frame, in the direction in which the subject is moving. Breaking these rules can create intriguing shots and evoke certain emotions. Giving your subject an abnormal amount of headroom can make them seem uncomfortable, small, or insignificant. When a subject is given a small amount of lead room, it can communicate that they are lost, trapped, or isolated. And even if the audience doesn't consciously realize what the filmmaker intended, awkward compositions are extremely effective in conveying these emotions. When it comes to mastering the art of composition in cinematography, having access to great references is key. And that's exactly where the sponsor of this video, FrameSet, comes in. If you don't know FrameSet, it's basically an incredibly useful online library with a huge collection of over 500,000 assets from movies, commercials, and music videos. One of the most valuable things about FrameSet is that it organizes images in a way that makes it easy to search for specific styles, but also, for example, search by particular cinematographers. FrameSet gives you the option to enter up to 20 different filters to really fine-tune what you might be looking for. A filter that I use a lot is frame size. So let's say I want to look for medium and medium wide shots. And I also want the shot to only have one person. Now I can even add a composition filter, for example, symmetrical shots. And right away, FrameSet is showing me a bunch of great shots I could use as inspiration for future projects. If you also want to start using FrameSet to access tons and tons of reference images, all you need to do is click the link in the description and use the code STAN10 for a 10% discount. No matter how you compose your shot, a good rule of thumb is that your frame should be balanced. When comparing these two shots, you can automatically sense which one of these is balanced or unbalanced. In an unbalanced image, one side of the frame feels heavier than the other. And even though a viewer doesn't necessarily know what it is that is wrong, they can feel that something is off. Adding something to the other side of the frame can help bring balance to a shot. Again, the rule of thirds can be helpful with bringing balance to your image. When you're shooting interviews or dialogue, the ideal location to place your subject's eyes is on the upper horizontal line, and you'll see this over and over again in almost all Hollywood films. For wider frames or shots with horizons, placing your subject on one of the two horizontal lines can bring balance to your shot, whereas placing it in the middle often makes a frame less interesting. balance can also mean symmetry. The human mind naturally loves order and balance, and that is why we are drawn to the beauty of symmetry. Having both sides of your frame match each other in some way or another is visually pleasing to our eye. Breaking the rules of balance and opting for an unbalanced frame can make the audience uneasy. It's all about what you're trying to tell with the shot.
What if you can create your own website by saying, "This is what I want"? With Wix, you can. First up, let's talk about AI color themes. You can get any combos you want, bold and bright, minimalist and sleek, or something you didn't even think of.
The technique of framing within a frame is a powerful way to direct focus to your subject while helping convey your story visually. This can be done in many different ways by triangles, circles, squares, and so on. A frame within a frame gives the viewer a smaller area of focus within a shot and puts emphasis on what or who is important within the scene. Framing a subject can help evoke certain emotions. A small frame can make the audience feel uncomfortable and claustrophobic. By using a frame within a frame, filmmakers can create a sense of separation between the audience and the characters, making the audience feel like they are distant spectators of the scene. And the use of frames is also a great way to add depth to a shot. Which brings us to one of the most important compositional methods in cinematography, depth. In filmmaking, we're representing three-dimensional space in a two-dimensional medium, and the best way to do this is by making use of depth. You can divide space into three sections: foreground, midground, and background. These sections can then be used to layer a composition. Shallow depth of field can be used to separate the subject from the background and provide more emphasis to that subject. Naturally, the viewer's eyes will get drawn to whatever is in focus, and blurring out the background can also remove any distractions from an otherwise busy scene. Pulling your subject away from the background helps in creating depth within the shot. If you film someone directly up against the wall, the image will have absolutely no depth. So even if you're shooting in a very small space, try putting your subject as far away from the background as possible, or shoot into a corner of the room. This will naturally create more depth in your shot. Adding something to the foreground will also add depth to an image. Even smaller out-of-focus objects will add another visual layer to the shot. The image will then have foreground, midground, typically the subject, and background, and these layers create depth. And a technique you'll see a lot of filmmakers use to draw attention to a specific object in the shot is by pulling focus from one thing to another. You might not become aware of something until the moment when the camera focuses on it. It will automatically tell us what is important and what we need to be looking at. Another beautiful way films can draw our attention to a certain subject in the frame is by using color and contrast. Filmmakers can use color in the frame to direct the viewer's eye. They can make a subject stand out very obviously by having them in a certain color. In monochromatic shots, the dark subjects are being separated from the colored background, drawing your attention to them. And using complementary colors can be a great way to separate your subject from the background and emphasize them in the shot. Similar to color, contrast can be used to organize and define a shot's composition. Our eyes are naturally drawn to the brightest parts of an image, so having your subject lit and surrounded by darkness will help keep the audience's focus on them. But the opposite is also true. The character as a silhouette will make them stand out against a bright background. Now, there is no doubt that all of these techniques, rules, or methods can help you improve your cinematography. But a very important thing to keep in mind is that there is no such thing as right or wrong in filmmaking. There's only more interesting and less interesting. So whatever compositional technique you're using, just make sure it's interesting.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea.
Hi, my name is YOOOOhelloooO and I work as a cinematographer. I've been wanting to put together this course in order to share with you all what I consider to be the most important lessons I learned about cinematic lighting throughout my formative years in film school. The idea came to me in 2020 when all work came to a halt and several of my fellow filmmakers asked me for a crash course in lighting. I believe this class would benefit any up-and-coming cinematographers, gaffers, key grips, but also directors who'd like to communicate more precisely with their DPs. I owe all of this knowledge to Professors John Crawford and Gordon Arkenberg, two absolutely fantastic teachers at New York University whose heart for teaching are pure and beautiful. Let's begin. So how can we understand and work with light, which can seem so abstract and intangible? One way to think of lighting is to think of it as having 5 distinct characteristics or attributes, namely direction, quality, also known as softness, color, intensity, and cut and shape. We'll also see why it is important to think of these attributes in this specific order when working on set. So the first characteristic we have is lighting direction. It is probably the most important characteristic because of how heavily it dictates the mood of a scene. The light direction is also what takes longest to adjust on set, so it is important to get it right first. We will look at different lighting directions with a diagram that illustrates where the light is placed relative to the subject, footage of how it appears on camera, and behind the scenes footage showing where those lights were placed to get the result. Most importantly, I'd like to invite you to ask yourself, how do these different lighting placements make me feel as an audience? And do they already, in and of themselves, tell a specific story? So let's begin with the front light. Front lighting is achieved by placing the light on axis with the camera. It can be done with the unit placed behind the camera or in front of it and above the frame. Rarely do we see this lighting direction because it can easily make your image look flat or two-dimensional. As cinematographers, we're trying to reproduce a three-dimensional world on a two-dimensional medium. To do so, we have to use what painters call chiaroscuro, namely alternations between areas of light and shadows, or simply put, contrast. So why is it difficult to achieve contrast with a front light? Well, there are two main reasons. One is that you'd most likely eliminate all the shadows on your subject's face, which will decrease the perception of depth on their faces. And two, because by front lighting, you'd also most likely illuminate the background right behind your subject, making it difficult for you to make the background darker without affecting the light falling on your subject. And you usually want the background to be somewhat darker than your subject in order to once again create contrast between the foreground and background elements of your image, and thus making your subject pop out. More on that later. One way to still be able to make your background darker with a front light is to make sure that your light is high enough to be able to use what people call a topper, which is a flag or a net that cuts off the top portion of the light beam which would hit your background without affecting the light falling on your subject. Next, we have what's commonly known as a butterfly light. This placement allows you to front light your subject while retaining some contrast on your subject's face, as well as some contrast between your subject and your background. To achieve a butterfly light, you'd want to place the light in front of your subject and high enough pointed down to create this butterfly-shaped nose shadow. You'll notice that the cheekbones also create their own shadows, which creates more depth in your subject's face. It is much easier to control the light falling on the background with a butterfly light as the light is pointing down at your subject. You can then use a barn door, a topper, or a skirt to cut off the light spilling on the background. It is important to note that a butterfly light doesn't look appealing on all faces. Deep eye sockets, for example, can be a challenge with this type of lighting, but a bounce board placed under your talent to fill in the shadows would usually help with that. Next, we have what's commonly called a Rembrandt light. Named after the Dutch painter who used this technique in several of his pieces, it is easily recognizable by the way the nose shadow creates a triangle of light on the shadow side of your talent's face. It is a wonderful way to light both sides of a face with one light, as it looks really natural, pleasing, and three-dimensional. Because of this, it is very commonly used in movies and can be found almost everywhere. To achieve this look, you'd want to position your light roughly 45 degrees off axis to your subject's eye line and have the light pointed down at about a 45-degree angle. This will allow the light to reach both sides of the face, creating this pleasant nose shadow that kind of blends in with the smile line of the face. Next, we have the side light. In this scenario, the light is placed at about 90 degrees off axis relative to your subject's eye line, creating a very dramatic look where half of the face is lit while the other half is in shadows. In most cases, you'd want to place the light slightly closer on axis with the camera in order to avoid this shadow cast by the talent's cheek itself. So instead of it being a complete 90-degree angle, you're looking more at a 80-degree angle. Next, we have what's commonly called a kicker, or an edge light. For this setup, we'd want our light to be placed anywhere between 15 to 45 degrees behind your subject, creating this highlight around the shoulders that can wrap around the cheek however much you'd like depending on how far off axis the light is. It can be used on its own, as in this example, but will most likely be paired with a reflector in front of your subject to balance out the contrast, or in addition to a key light. It's a wonderful way to create more depth to your image, as it creates yet another layer of alternation between light and shadow and helps separate your subject from the background, as you can see in this example. And finally, we have the backlight. A backlight can be recognized by the highlight it creates around the subject's shoulders, and it is achieved by placing the light directly behind your subject. The main difference between a backlight and a kicker is that the backlight doesn't wrap around the subject's cheek. Just like a kicker, it can be used on its own or to complement your key light to create more separation between your subject and the background. Unless you're purposely trying to flare your lens, you usually have your backlight high enough and pointed down to avoid any unwanted flare or glare on the lens. Generally speaking, no matter what lighting direction you choose to use, you'd often have the light high up and pointed down at your subject so that their shadow falls on the ground in a natural way, helping you avoid seeing the shadows on the walls. But there's really no rule here. Sometimes you do want to see the shadow to evoke a certain emotion. A great way to study lighting while watching movies is to ask yourself the following questions. Where is the light coming from? And how does it make me feel? The answer to the latter is quite personal and will differ from person to person, but the former can easily be answered by looking at where the shadow created by the nose is falling. If there's no nose shadow and the face is lit up evenly, then it's a front light. If there's a butterfly-shaped shadow under the nose, then it's a butterfly light. If the nose shadow forms a triangle of light on the shadow side, then it's a Rembrandt light. If the nose shadow isn't visible because the face is split in half between light and shadow, then it's a side light. Also keep in mind that lighting is dynamic. A single light can hit your talents in different ways depending on where they are, which is why it is so important as cinematographers to collaborate with the director when it comes to blocking. For example, in this scene from La Haine, directed by Mathieu Kassovitz and shot by Pierre Haïm, this one key light acts as a backlight on Vince, a Rembrandt light on Hubert, and a very toppy butterfly light on Saïd. Additionally, I find it helpful to think of cinematography as an interpretation of reality, rather than a scientific recreation of it. For example, in this scene from Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, you will notice that while the two characters are facing each other, they're both getting backlit by the sun. It doesn't make sense logically, but it does make sense emotionally, as having the light fall on them in a similar fashion creates cohesion to both images and put these two characters on the same emotional plane. In this other example, the key light changes direction completely when we cut from the wide shot to the close-up. In this other example, the actor is supposed to be lit by the candles under her, but the cinematographer used a supplemental light placed in a Rembrandt position instead.
It's really, I just moved the camera
Generally
around.
speaking,
Not
you
really,
can
I
get
have a
away
new
with the light
setup.
coming from an unrealistic direction as long as the other characteristics of light somewhat follow what you'd expect the light to look
I
like
moved
in
the
real
desk.
life.
I rotated
Which
kind of
brings us to
around
our
depending
next
on
lighting
what I'm doing along
characteristic,
with the light.
quality, also known as softness.
Still same room. Still same setup. Need to open up the actual chat. I can't see chat. That's weird. Don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, you're on the vertical. Oh, that's why I'm tripping. There it is. Those, no audio. Testing, testing. Audio. Testing.
The fuzzy perimeter, created by
Testing.
oblique rays of light coming around the
Testing.
edges of the subject. Hard light has a very small penumbra, or none at all. Soft light has a very large penumbra, with little or no umbra. So understanding this, how can we creatively manipulate the softness of our light on set? You can do so in many ways. For example, you can diffuse the light source to make it bigger and thus softer, but you can also move that soft light closer to your subject to make it even softer, as its relative size to your subject would then increase. The opposite is true, where you can move your light away from your subject to make it harder. If you want the softest light out of a diffusion frame, make sure to fill the frame as evenly as possible to once again make the light source, which is now the diffusion frame by the way, bigger. If the diffused light appears too soft and you don't have the room or the time to back up the light, you can spot the unit to make it harder. Generally speaking, a soft light would soften things like pimples, pores, and wrinkles, because the bigger light will fill in the shadows created by the natural textures of the skin. And it is helpful to know that if you're trying to extend a light, meaning to add your own film light, while pretending that this light is still coming from a source that is visible in frame, such as a window or practical lamp, that you can more easily get away with making the added film light softer than what the actual source would be in real life, rather than making it harder. Again, we're not trying to scientifically recreate this reality, but rather to interpret it. And the more you shoot, the more you'll know what you can get away with. Next we have color. As cinematographers, the two main ways we have to work with colors are through color temperature and different combinations of red, green, and blue light, which can be achieved by dialing settings on an LED light or with the use of gels. Let's first talk about color temperature. First, we have to understand that what we consider to be white light actually comes in many different tones. For instance, the white light you have inside of houses is generally a warmer, more orange white than the light that comes from the sun, which is bluer in comparison. These different gradients of warmth and coolness, orange or white to blue or white, is what's referred to as the color temperature of a light, and it is measured in kelvins. The lower the Kelvin number, and the more orange the light will appear, while the higher the Kelvin number, the bluer the light will appear. An easy way to remember that is to think of fire. The higher the temperature, the bluer the flame. The lower the temperature, the more orange. Despite all these different gradients of white, you'd most likely still see white as white if you were to carry around a piece of white paper across several white lights varying in color temperature. And that is because your brain knows that the paper should appear white and automatically compensates and adjusts its interpretation of colors for it to appear white. But your camera doesn't know that white should appear white under different color temperatures, and so you have the option to dial in the white balance. Matching your white balance in camera to the color temperature of your light will make white appear neutral, that is, without a shift towards orange or blue. All that your camera is doing when changing white balance is adjusting its sensitivity in the lower or higher end of the visible spectrum of light. When balancing to tungsten or 3200 Kelvin, the camera sensor becomes less sensitive to the higher end of the visible spectrum in order to pick up less of the red and orange, which are overly present in tungsten lights. Likewise, when balancing to daylight or 5600 Kelvin, the camera becomes less sensitive to the lower end of the visible spectrum in order to pick up less blue light, which is more abundant in sunlight. So that's the technical side. How do you use color temperature creatively? For a start, you can balance your camera to the same temperature as the light that is most prominent in your scene, and then adjust the color temperature of the other lights accordingly. In this example, we balanced the camera to 3200 Kelvin, which is also what we use for our key light, while this practical lamp was set to 2000 kelvins, and this shaft of light to 4800 Kelvin for a bit of color contrast. But you don't always have to match the white balance on your camera to the color temperature of your key light. For instance, with this light set to 5600 Kelvin to mimic sunlight, you can either set your camera to 5600 Kelvin or set your camera to 4800 Kelvin for a colder feel, perhaps a winter light. But you don't always have to match the white balance on your camera to the color temperature of your key light. Or perhaps set the camera to 6500 Kelvin for a warmer feel. To mimic sunlight, you can either set your camera to 5600 Kelvin or set your camera to 40. How about setting your camera to 5600 Kelvin, but having your light at 4200 Kelvin for a late afternoon feel?
It is a 10-second delay.
Or perhaps you can also set your light to 5600 Kelvin and balance your camera to 4200 Kelvin for a bluish moonlight. In this example, we had industrial fluorescent tubes that we matched with our film lights by setting them to 5000 Kelvin with a quarter plus green gel. We then balanced the camera to 3800 Kelvin in order to get this cyan tone throughout the scene. The cyan tone was then enhanced in the grade. Those are just a few examples, and I invite you to experiment and see what you like by dialing different color temperatures in your light and camera while lighting your set. Once you've set your color temperature, you can also change the color of your light by using a gel in front of it or by dialing in the color or a gel preset if you're using an RGB LED unit. A gel essentially acts as a filter that cuts out part of your light spectrum. For instance, a primary red gel will only let red wavelengths pass through while cutting off all the other wavelengths. And because some of your light's wavelengths are cut off by the gel, your light will lose in light intensity, which is why you should not worry about light intensity until you set your light direction, the quality, and the color to your liking. Tweaking any of those three attributes will affect your light exposure, so save yourself some time and keep that light meter away until you're happy with this
right
three.
here in front of me.
And once you're happy, then you can look at exposure. There are many books and online resources that cover how to set up proper exposure as well as the mathematical relationship between t-stop, shutter angle, and ISO, so I'll skip that part. What I find more useful to look at in order to create compelling images are your key to fill light ratio and the foreground to background lighting ratio. Both key to fill light ratio and foreground to background ratio are expressed either in stops or in their difference in brightness. They both refer to the same thing, but it's a technical side note that is worth mentioning because different people would express the same concept in two different ways.
You know what I'm saying?
First, we must understand that there is a doubling of or halving of the amount of light measured in lux or foot candle every time you open up or close down your lens by a stop. The same goes for dimming your light up
Honestly, I
or
didn't
down
really
by a
even
stop.
put together all the
Opening up a stop
the
on
weapons.
your lens
I
might
really
not
just threw
look
the
like the
axe
image is
on
getting
there
twice
and
as
then
bright to our
posed
human
it and
eyes,
stuck it there.
but that is only
I really
because our
gotta
eyes
go
and brain
upstairs and grab the
interpret light
rest of
in
the
a
weapons.
logarithmic way. so that we too can fit in more visible stops at once and have a higher dynamic range.
I still need to add
But
the stickers
mathematically
because it
speaking,
still has
you are letting in twice as
some
much light
lights. It
into
has
your
some
sensor
it has some pretty
every
light
time you
stickers.
open up a stop on your lens, and half as much light
Thank
every
you,
time you
bro.
close down by a stop.
These are the stickers
So
I
how
still
can we
gotta
use
put
this
on.
concept creatively? Let's start with the key to fill light ratio. This ratio refers
Thank
to
you,
the difference
appreciate
in
it.
brightness
It's
between the key
been a
side and
long
fill
time
side
coming up
of
with
your
the
Talon's
setup
face.
and just
Namely,
learning
the
all this
brightest side
filming
of
and
your
all this
face
kind of
that is
stuff.
facing the light, and the opposite side, also known as the shadow side. What does your scene need? What key to fill ratio shows the emotion you're trying to convey? Is it a one-stop ratio, which is also called a 2-to-1 ratio, because your key side is twice as bright as your
His
fill side?
monotoneness is
Is
like
it a
literally
2-stop
kind of
or
killing it
4-to-1
for
ratio?
me.
A 3-stop or
And
8-to-1
I know he's
ratio?
giving out none but keys, but I'm just like, At the same time, I want to hear some stuff about One Piece because I read the new chapter today. I didn't read the leaks. I read the official chapter when it came out. I want to hear everybody's else take on it. Oh wait, hold on, we got something in the chat. It's your mother. Yo, what's good? What's good? I mean, what's good with you? Yeah. It's Gucci. What's your favorite Japanese bands? Damn, I don't got one.
With them
Cause
talking
even as
about
old as I am, I low-key don't got. Wait. The band that played the song Air Gear Chains, Back On. Yeah, Back On. Yeah. Or the band that played the intro to Noir back in 2009. Yeah. Tight shit. What happened on my YouTube? I haven't really watched any One Piece, bro. It's too long. I mean, I've read it, watched it multiple times from beginning to end recently. It's just something you just do if you feel like doing. I can't even stress that. I will never tell no one not to start One Piece, but I will never not tell no one saying it is long. Like life is long.
The deciding factor in the final war. So Rox needs a devil fruit that can provide him with.
Yeah, Back On Chains. They made the intro to Air Gear.
I think I'd be more on board with this idea if not for two reasons though. The first is that Rox mentioned the Galilard Giants rather than just an army, which is relevant because Jarl himself counts those two groups as separate legends. There were the Galilard Giants and there's a frozen army out there. And it makes me think that what Rox needs isn't the physical power of a legion of giants, but the technical skills and expertise that the ancient Galilard Giants had, potentially to operate an existing ancient weapon, or even to help them construct a new ancient weapon, which I guess we would call a modern weapon. But you don't get those skills if you reanimate them with Moria's fruit, because the personality and prior knowledge is mostly dictated by the shadow, not the body. But the second thing is Harold. If we were looking into Moria's devil
I'm about to
fruit, then
paste
King Harold
it into
probably
the
wouldn't
chat.
All you need to do is put a shadow into a corpse, and the corpse eventually obeys whoever the user of the shadow fruit is, which we even saw happen with Luffy's shadow. So if it can happen to someone with his will, it can happen to anyone. And in theory, we wouldn't need Harold at all. But we do need Harold, so I don't think it was the plan of Rox. However, I would not discount it being the current plan of Blackbeard. We're going to flag some more core differences between Teach and Zebek. They are very interesting people, not as similar as initially painted. But another of these differences could be how Blackbeard plans to use the giants if he does get access to them, and hence why he captured Gecko Moria instead of killing him, although Moria has since escaped from Blackbeard's delicious
This
custody.
shit really
But
old, man.
think
I'm
we should keep
old, bro.
Blackbeard
I'm
because
really
the Straw
old. I
Hats
was
are
watching
not the
Air
only ones
Gear.
who know where these
Let me tell you.
giants are. It is very
I was watching Air Gear back when we had HBO back when you had Time Warner Cable and they gave you free anime to watch. That's how old I am. I'm old as trash. I'm old. But I was young when I watched this shit. I don't know if you know that. There's trash in the trees. You mean get Ueki, Laws of Ueki? Cause that's my shit too. Bro with green hair. It kind of gives you a little bit of Zatch Bell vibes. Cause that's also what it kind of gave me, even though I grew up watching Zatch Bell when it aired. And I read it along with Mars. Like, I'm trying to tell y'all, I'm old. I'm old to the point where y'all know what fairy tale is. I'm old where I know what came before fairy tale. Rave Master. That's how old I am. Rave Master old. Like, like, yo, and they not, we fam, bro. We fam. Yeah, I'm old as dirt when you play in anime terms, like.
He could have discovered them during those 10 days, or even however many days it was that Kuzan was there recovering after losing the fight. And then there's also the wild
Facts,
part
didn't
that
get
is
no
as a
reboot.
clown. He knows that those
Yo, y'all
bugs are
remember the
there,
show
and
Reboot?
unfortunately, he is a
The
very
digital show
untrustworthy
Reboot?
place to store
Calm down.
world-changing information. Roger must have had some crazy observation haki to know that he was going to grow a mustache and use it as his Jolly Roger. So this is the question that I had after the God Valley flashback as well, and this happens well before that. We do see the Orjax in this chapter, and there are two very important things that we should examine.
He
The
had
first
extreme
is that,
hockey.
even all of the way back then, the Jolly Roger of the crew featured Roger's at the time non-existent mustache and or nose hair, as originally Oda did intend to be Roger's nose hair masquerading as a mustache. But usually the Jolly Roger is a pretty direct representation of the captain of a crew, at least in One Piece. There are a few exceptions to this, but not many. So why would a relatively young and fairly nude upper lip Roger choose to represent himself with a mustache that he does not have? A few fun answers that I've heard are one, that it was always Roger's ambition to grow a mustache, but he just couldn't pull it off until later in life. And I also saw someone suggest that in an attempt to impress Ashaki, Roger shaved his mustache off because she made fun of it the last time they met. However, I would also say let's just look at the Jolly Roger again and note that the mustache is drawn in the style of those Gear 5th swirls. And maybe it has a meaning tied to Joy Boy rather than Roger himself. Sort of like how the Rocks Pirates Jolly Roger has that demonic swirl in the skull that is now hypothesized to be Rox's depiction of Davy Jones rather than himself, because Rox doesn't look anything like it. But the next thing that we should look at, and this is something that you should always be on the lookout for with Jackson, which is that even this early in the journey, the Roger Pirates are carrying the giant spotted egg.
Oh yeah, last week, I mean,
mysteries that we
it's
still
all good. I mean, there's some playbacks of last week, and it was really just drones and finishing up the Zaku, and rearranging and learning different types of cinematography gear. And then we got this up and coming,
it's some sort of room like food storage or whatnot.
the RX-78 Model 2 clear color prototype mobile suit limited item from the Origins movie.
Yeah, not in a amazing chapter to be Roger. For the first time, I think the he didn't laugh meme actually applies, and this chapter has actually birthed a brand new online artistic movement of Rayleigh stealing Roger's girl. And what makes it funnier is that, yeah, this flashback has spiraled into its own thing, but it did logically begin as Loki's story. So just think about that. If this whole flashback is being framed as the words of Loki, within that framework, you've got Loki glazing the crap out of Rox, his hero, and slandering Roger, that ugh. Listen up, there was a really cool guy who like the whole world was afraid of.
Thank
His name was
you,
Rox.
inspired.
Emu pulled down his pants, flipped him off, and jumped off the red line with my dad. But then you have this dude, Roger, right? Absolute beta cuck. While Rox was busy declaring war on the planet, Roger was simping for his first mate's wife. Really embarrassing stuff. And Harridan's just sitting there patiently yet angrily wondering when Loki's finally gonna get to the point. But I should say that this first mate game is a bit of an established trend in the fictional pirating world. The first mate usually pulls at higher rates than the captain. Oda in Volume 4 Billion said that Ben Beckman was the ladies' man of the red hair pirates, and also stuff like how King is the established pretty boy of the beast pirates. Really, the Straw Hats are aberration because more women do tend to fall for Luffy than they do Zoro, and it is interesting to see such a distinct difference between Luffy
For me,
and Roger.
whatever I see my eye catches or my pocket seems like kind of affordable, I cop.
Painted by the same brush, but I am really enjoying getting to know Roger more and not just associating him with
Maybe through all the streaming stuff and monetization, we'll be able to afford more exclusive
how he, the future pirate,
model
was completely
kits.
defeated and brought to the floor by Shaki. Which, full credit to Shaki, this makes her the first character who we've seen on page or on screen defeat Roger. Roger is not unbeatable, especially in these early pre-Pirate King days. Remembering that the story we're telling right now isn't even Roger's era. Roger's era began after the defeat of Rox. So we're still in the infancy of the Roger Pirates as well, and after having praised his differences
So before Roger was king of the pirates, he was kind of a loser that lost.
A whole ton of people across his career, just like Luffy has. Luffy tends to lose or somehow be rendered prone at least once per arc, usually due to something stupid. And sometimes it is justified, like being beaten by Kaido 3 times, but other times it is just Luffy being an idiot, like when he got trapped in a coffin and had his shadow stolen by Gecko Moria. And I feel like if we were to go through Roger's entire career, which I would love to see, and I hope we do one day, but if we did, I bet we'd see a lot of dumb losses from him as well. Funny to see Rox treat Kaido like an unpaid intern. So when it comes to the Rox Pirates, Kaido was nothing. He was a glorified cabin boy. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's only 15 years old in this chapter. You can definitely tell.
Hey gang, I'm
everyone else on this
alert. I feel it, bro. Make sure you get, pay attention to work. Don't fall short.
Shockingly, aside from Stroyson and Stussy,
Love you, bro.
he probably has the least amount of raw physical power at the time in this group. So Kaido, he's a bit of an afterthought in this era. He's lucky just to be included. Similarly to how when we meet children during arcs, we don't spend too much time thinking about how characters like Colin are going to grow up to be the Luffy's, Rogers, and Garps of the next generation following the conclusion of One Piece. And the Rox Kaido dynamic, it's very fun. It's a lot like the Luffy Shanks dynamic in chapter 1. They have this similar interaction. You know, the one when Luffy gets very angry at Shanks for not fighting back when Higama made fun of him, and Shanks teaches Luffy that not every little thing is worth fighting over. And in this chapter, Kaido suggests forcing Harold to join them via their strength powers, and then Rox, much more violently and brutally than Shanks, has to set Kaido straight with a foot to the face. And I'm not 100% sure that Kaido took this lesson on board. Maybe it has to do with the teaching methods, because he does go on to use his overwhelming power to force most people into doing what he wants, rather than going out of his way to allow them the liberty to choose, which is a very important concept when it comes to Rox. At the moment, he is very pro-freedom and even pro-friendship, which gives him that potent shot of Joy Boy charisma, and it's something that definitely sets him apart from his son Blackbeard, who likes having a good time with his crew, but he is always willing to sacrifice and use any of even his closest crew members at any given moment. And also, we do know that he kept slaves on Hachinosu, which is not very pro-freedom. That's a line that we still haven't seen Rox cross yet. So as much as he positions himself as an antagonist, I don't see him as a villain yet. And actually, he's falling into the same area as my current argument for Loki, which is that every horrible thing we've heard about Loki is being hearsay from another giant, that Loki's a liar, he's a murderer, he's a sociopathic villain whose goal is to end existence as we know it. But Loki himself has yet to really do anything that would make me think any of those things, and the same is true of Rox right now. All the worst things we know about Rox are words from others, mostly Sengoku, who does have a bit of a bias to picture Rox in the worst possible light. Maybe we will see those words brought to fruition, but at the moment, that's not the case. I mean, Rox, he's definitely not a kind man, and he's not above acts like, say, beating up giant children, or giant child singular with Loki. Don't think he's done it to multiple yet, but so far the truth of Rox
is a
not at all
badass,
as sinister as we've been led to believe.
I got Lydia outside. We're gonna do some recording while I finish up my yard work.
Rox is a badass.
Bust down lace and sunglasses.
I fucks with Rox.
Silverax seems like he had whatever devil fruit Uruj has. Look how skinny he was before the guy kicked him. Yes, that's very well spotted. Before the full reveal of the man who would become Silverax, we see him as a rather small and thin man, about the height of the same person that he's comfortably holding like a toy in the full reveal panel. And what's going on here does seem to be quite similar to the ability of Mad Monk Uruj. He has a still unnamed devil fruit that allows him to transform damage incurred into strength, which has the physical effect of bulking him up according to the damage he took. Uruj calls this karmic punishment, and it could very well be the same ability that Silverax is using in this chapter, which would be yet another Rox connection to the worst generation, as we're also currently speculating that Don Marlin is related to Capone Gang Beige, but it may also be a completely different power altogether. And we're probably going to get our answer to this in a future SBS segment. Ganzui looks so much like the 5th, 6th, and 7th son of Big Mom. She definitely had a lot of fun with the Rox Pirates. So I've been trying not to notice that, because in this era, Big Mom was, according to the timeline, pretty much non-stop pregnant. It's actually surprising that you can't see a bump in their group shot, meaning that she must have given birth very recently before this moment, because she had kids in almost every year of her time with the Rox Pirates, which does bring up the question of, well, where did she source all of these fathers? Now the comparison has been drawn between Ganzui and the Charlotte quintuplets, the most famous one being Charlotte Opera, although he's not a great comparison, mostly because he keeps himself covered in cream at all times, which I want to point out is not a quirk of his devil fruit, it's just a lifestyle choice. But there's also Charlotte Counter, Cadenza, Cabaletta, and Gala, who anime watchers should be very familiar with, because there was a frankly painful amount of filler of Luffy facing off against each one of them individually during Whole Cake Island, except for Gala, who interestingly has never actually been featured in either the anime or the manga. All we have is this sketch of him. Now with that said, I don't know how on board I am with Ganzui as the father. They do look kind of similar, but I don't know if there's quite enough there. And I also don't know if it works out in terms of the timeline either, because the Charlotte quintuplets, they're quite old. They're all 46 years old. Those dudes are very middle-aged men, far too middle-aged to be covering themselves in cream. So Ganzui would have had to impregnate Big Mom 47 years ago, and it's a tight window, but it could work out, as 48 years ago was when we saw the Rox Pirates on Elbaf with their tiny crew that did not feature Charlotte Linlin at the time. So if she joins them in that next year, then I suppose there is a window. I find it crazy that more people are into Shaki than Gloriosa. Am I missing something? Maybe you are, but mate, who cares? You are in the minority, which means less competition for you. Women don't like simps, sure, but if you don't want your woman to simp for you, then you're crazy. Right, so I think the internet is a bit too liberal with the use of the word simp, because its definition is excessive and off-putting, desperate displays of attention and admiration with the goal of love or sex. And there is a big difference between this and showing genuine affection and appreciation for someone, which you might want to note is what Shaki showed Ray Lee and what Ray Lee showed back. They didn't simp for each other, but they did have that spark, and would you look at that, they're the two that end up married. So you may think that you want to be simped for, and you may even enjoy it for a few moments before you realize the full severity of your situation and just how much trouble you're now in. I don't care who you are, just because you may currently be living in a drought does not mean that you should be dreaming of drowning. Man on the internet, how can Shaki have Boa's devil fruit in the flashback and still be alive today? Perhaps the women of Amazon Lily have a secret understanding of devil fruits. Alright, this is definitely worth addressing because there is some very understandable confusion. In this chapter, we do see what appears to be Marine soldiers turned to stone. However, this is just an illusion caused by the shading that Oda has decided to use. As whenever people are turned to stone in the manga, they have this rough, splotchy texture applied to them, which isn't present with the Marines we see in this chapter. And the reason why Oda uses the shading effect that he did is for an easy way to create depth. For example, in the panel preceding the Marines, you've got all the men on the floor with the darker shade applied to them than the women and the background, which helps that perception of depth, separating foreground and background. Whereas if they were both the same shade, then it would be more of a monotonous blob and a difficult panel to look at. But I do see why it's slightly confusing in this particular case. Shaki has more game than Boa, probably because Boa hates men. I mean, yeah, if we're talking game, both Shaki and Hancock, they are generational talents at said game, but Shaki actually enjoys playing and has a passion for the game, so of course that is always going to take her a lot further than Hancock. Man on the internet, what if the God Valley event happened after Harold's death, or even because of his death? So that was honestly my first thought as well because of the ridiculous degree of importance that Harold now has to the world. But that was very quickly dispelled because we do know that Harold was still alive when adult Shanks went to visit Elbaf. And given that Shanks was a baby during God Valley, it seems like Harold went on to live quite some time after the God Valley incident. Mr. Internet Man, I am almost certain that Barbell of the Rocks Pirates is brothers with Sunbell of the Roger Pirates. I really like this. I think you could be on something here because yes, they are both fishermen. They're also both quite chongsome, and unfortunately we know next to nothing about Sunbell, not his role on the crew, not even what kind of fisherman he is. Although we do know that Toei accidentally race swapped him at some point, because in episode 0 they animated him as a big old pasty human. But two fishmen, two chonky fishmen whose names both end in Bell, both on opposing sides of the pirating spectrum. Look, I don't think it's insane to think that they may be related. Next chapter better explain why Gloriosa joined Rox instead of Roger. I think this chapter explained that. Gloriosa joined Rox because Roger didn't want anything to do with her on his group. I almost guarantee that the second devil fruit that Rox was looking for was the dark fruit to eat for himself. There's some sort of secret to that, like its awakening ability. With the limited amount of what we know, I do currently think this makes the most sense. It would also explain why Blackbeard from childhood knew the exact fruit that he was hunting for. If Blackbeard's mother knew about Rox's plan, then she could have passed those details down to little Marshall D. Teach, who spent 2 decades patiently and diligently searching for one fruit to rule them all. But something else to suggest would be Blackbeard's second fruit, the Guruguru no Mi, because it's only something like that that would have had the power to do something drastic, like say tear down the Red Line and actually destroy the Holy Land. But also, it can't be both, as one of the 2 fruits that Rox is looking for was supposed to be on Elbaf, hinting that it's their legendary devil fruit. But then again, Rox may only be flagging 2 fruits here because he may already be the user of one. At this point, Rox could be the user of the Yami Yami no Mi right here and now, and the true key to this whole plan is, as we've suspected for quite some time with Blackbeard, is to achieve a total of 3 devil fruits, 1 from each class: the Darkness Logia, the Tremor Paramecia, and the as of yet unnamed Zoan fruit. And I very much look forward to discovering exactly what kind of devil fruit Elbaf's legendary treasure is.
I got another sales call and now, and I can't even remember the customer.
Oh, there's still one more video. We're not gonna go. Yeah, we fresh as fuck, with a bitch on. She said she wanted to rock, so she pulled up. I told her she can't get in, not a blunt. She can't get up in my car without a blunt. Baby fast fuck, filled with gas as fuck. I don't give a fuck. She said she wanna nut it up. She wanna get on me and fucking ride it up. Oh my god, yeah. She said she wanna put it on the gang, yeah. She said she wanna put it on a ring, yeah. I was like, baby girl, you can't take it, yeah. You gotta get inside my fucking mind, yeah. Wait, when I turn up, I always turn up hard. She said she wanna turn up, so I turn up far. She said she wanna turn up far. She said she wanna turn up on a way too far, way too high. I can't even go on that shit, and the shit tell a lot. She be talking all that shit, and she said she wanna die. Roll up, baby girl, roll up and get fucking high.
Roll up and getting fucking hard. I gotta tell my dad happy birthday. Oh, yeah. It's about midnight and I haven't slept. Yeah. Tell my dad happy birthday. Yeah. What's up on the bed? Yeah. Yeah. Tell my dad happy birthday. And when I wake up, I'm gonna call him on the phone. And then I'm gonna sing happy. Oh, I'm doing too much already now, y'all. Alright now. It was just random. It's just random, you know what I'm saying? Just a little slight, you know what I'm saying? Oh. What?
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
You guys think he died from a drug overdose? You're wrong! There's a lot of y'all don't know.
That was Juice WRLD's girlfriend, Ali Lottie, hinting that his death wasn't what the world believed. And now, it looks like she was right. The person responsible has finally been sentenced, completely shifting how we understand Juice's final moments. And backing up everything Ali said. Let's break it all down.
What?
The sentencing they never thought would come. The trial is over. The man who helped orchestrate the drug deal that led to the death of one of the greatest musical prodigies of our generation has just been sentenced. But if you think justice was served, think again. Because the killer of Juice WRLD didn't come with a gun. He came with a backpack filled with pills. And now, he's walking away with what many fans are calling a slap on the wrist. A sentencing so light, so disrespectful, that Juice's own mother had to pause, breathe, and say, this can't be it. Juice WRLD was a ticking time bomb. But the people holding the matches were paid to keep him lit. This wasn't just one overdose. It was a system of abuse, glamorization, and enabling. And now that system's trying to wash its hands clean. But we're not letting them. Let's rewind. By now, most fans know how it ended. A private jet, a raid, a panic, a seizure, a lifeless body at Chicago Midway. But that story has since cracked wide open because what Ali Lottie, Juice WRLD's longtime girlfriend, revealed in a now viral clip completely shatters the official narrative.
Y'all mad because literally I'm like, oh, blah, blah, blah. You guys think he died from a drug overdose? You're wrong. You're wrong. Literally, you're wrong. So suck it. Okay? Suck it.
In that emotional breakdown, she's not just ranting. She's screaming at the internet because, in her words,
There's a lot of y'all don't know that I fucking grieve through myself while I let y'all grieve and talk mad of me. I don't care. I'm gonna go ahead and be what y'all want me to be, which is me. Okay? All 10K of y'all. And they like that Barbie. Yup.
she's saying the version of events we've all been fed, the simple, tidy overdose story, is a lie. Why would she say that? Because what really happened on that plane is far more horrifying than what the media has packaged for public consumption. Here's the real timeline. December 8th, 2019. Juice WRLD. Real name, Jared Higgins. Boards a private jet from Los Angeles to Chicago. He's just turned 21. A new decade of life. A fresh start. But the plane, it's carrying something else. Federal authorities say the pilot had reported the presence of weapons and drugs on board according to this report. And when they landed, that's when everything went sideways. In a desperate move to hide what was on him, Juice WRLD allegedly swallowed multiple Percocet pills at once. A move many believe he made not to get high, but to stay out of jail.
I think I got one.
But here's where it gets sick. Why was he even in that position to begin with? According to DJ Academics, it wasn't just Juice WRLD's decision. It was the result of constant pressure, chaos, and mismanagement from the people around him.
Chat, I'm not saying he ain't whatever pills allegedly he took or whatever that made him overdose. I ain't saying he didn't do it that himself, but the police that spooked him would not be there if niggas around him weren't putting him in situations.
You hear that? Even Academics, not exactly known for being gentle, said it was Juice's circle that got him killed. And they weren't strangers. These were his friends, his crew, his management, the ones who let a young man ride dirty on a private plane and didn't stop him when he panicked and ingested a fatal dose of opioids. And as for those pills, the U.S. Department of Justice confirmed that Henry Dean, a close associate of Juice WRLD, was found guilty of bringing pills onto the plane. He received a sentence that, to many fans, felt like a cruel joke. 3 years probation and a fine. Let's be clear, Juice WRLD is dead. Dean is free. And fans, they're furious. Because for them, it's not just about one man. It's about the years of warning signs that were ignored. And the people who let it happen because, let's be honest, they were profiting. Even Juice WRLD himself was begging for help. In his last months, he spoke about trying to get clean. He admitted to being addicted. And he explained, painfully, how early that addiction took hold.
You always had issues with drugs even before you started to get famous and rich?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was something that I was into early, low-key, due to music. Cause like, I was a music head, so like in 6th grade, 7th grade, I'm hearing songs about sipping lean, and that shit had me wanting to sip lean at like 11, 12 years old, bro.
Yeah.
So 11 years old. And he says music, specifically Future's lyrics, made that lifestyle seem fun. We'll get to that part later. But it wasn't just talk. His mother confirmed it. He was trying to get help. He told me he was ready to get help. She described how just months before his death, Juice seemed like himself again. He was off lean. He was talking about therapy. And then it was over. The kicker. While Juice's body was still warm, the music label was already planning how to profit off his name. DJ Academics indirectly blew the lid off that whole scheme.
I wouldn't say necessarily if you're lying to fans about putting out Juice WRLD's music and you're having them basically forcing them to go support the Kid Leroy, that's the best thing to do. But truth be told, and I'm really trying to, I don't want to be disrespectful with this phrase, but one monkey don't stop a show. Like, Juice passed away. They running business over there. They're not about to be like, all right, let's keep crying and just put Juice's stuff out. They're trying to get the next horse to, again, it's business.
You hear that? Instead of giving fans closure, Interscope allegedly used Juice's death to push another artist. That's not music. That's corporate necromancy. And what do the fans get? Unreleased Juice WRLD tracks chopped up in Frankenstein with verses from artists he never approved. A promise of a deluxe album that was never delivered, unless you stream another artist first. And then they have the nerve to act like this is a tribute. No, it's a business. And Juice WRLD was their cash cow, even in death. Now ask yourself, how many people knew this was going to happen? How many people watched Juice WRLD spiral and said nothing? Allie. Lottie said it best.
No one helped. No one. There was one person out of all the people that were there that were able to help. I'm not talking about the group that we were with, because they were handcuffed, so there's not much they could do. But everyone else that was there was only one person who helped me. It was a woman. I'm so grateful for her.
No one helped, except for one woman, a stranger. Everyone else, they watched. Because when Juice WRLD hit the ground, he didn't just fall alone. He fell through the cracks of an industry that eats young talent. And unless we talk about it, really talk about it, it's going to keep happening. The system that failed him, legal intervention and industry enablement. The failure went deeper than just one tragic night at an airport. The system that was supposed to protect Juice WRLD had been crumbling for months, and the warning signs were everywhere. Yet instead of intervention, what we got was enablement. Instead of help, we got exploitation. Let's talk about what was really happening behind the scenes in the months leading up to December 8th, 2019. Because this story isn't just about one overdose. It's about a systematic failure that cost a young man his life. Juice WRLD's struggle with substance abuse was a significant concern for his team, with reports indicating that his drug use began in high school and escalated with his fame, involving substances like Xanax, Percocet, and lean. But here's what most people don't know. There were actual intervention efforts happening. Just weeks before his death, during a tour in Australia, collaborators like Max Lord and others confronted Juice WRLD about his drug use, expressing fears of losing him. This emotional intervention led to Juice WRLD agreeing to enter rehab, scheduled for December 22nd, 2019. December 22nd, 2019 marked that date. He was supposed to get help. He was supposed to be in rehab. Instead, he was dead 14 days earlier. Lil Bibby, as label head, was particularly alarmed when he learned Juice WRLD was taking 4 Percocet pills at a time. He organized an intervention, describing it as pulling teeth to get Juice WRLD's agreement to rehab. Bibby had already signed him up for a program, but Juice WRLD insisted on lowering his dosage rather than stopping entirely. Think about that for a second. The people who were supposed to be protecting him knew he was taking 4 Percocet pills at once. They knew he needed help. They even got him to agree to rehab, but somehow he still ended up on that plane with enough drugs to kill him. So what went wrong?
I just felt like his best interest wasn't being looked out for. I think people had their own agendas. I think they liked the lifestyle. And they were young too, so I have to give them that. They're young, so they don't see things the way, we would see them. But I just think that he just didn't have the people in place to just tell him to stop or no, or he just didn't have that support system in place.
His own mother saw it. The people around him weren't there to protect him. They were there to profit from him. And when you're making millions of dollars off someone's talent, their well-being becomes secondary to the business. But the legal system was closing in too. This wasn't just about addiction anymore. Juice WRLD was facing...
Welcome to today. The day where you no longer
serious criminal charges that could have destroyed his career and sent him to prison for decades. In November 2019, Juice WRLD and his entourage searched by drug-sniffing dogs and customs agents at LAX while boarding a flight to Sydney, Australia. This incident reportedly placed him on the FBI's watch list for drug possession. The feds were watching him. They had been for months. And when that private jet landed at Midway Airport on December 8, authorities found 70 pounds of marijuana in 41 vacuum-sealed bags, 6 bottles of prescription codeine cough syrup, 2 9mm pistols, a .40 caliber pistol, a high-capacity ammunition magazine, and metal-piercing bullets, 70 pounds of marijuana. That's not personal use, that's trafficking. Under federal law, that could have meant 15 years in prison. Add the weapons charges, and you're looking at potentially decades behind bars. The legal pressure was immense. User opinions from Reddit estimated that Juice WRLD faced many years in prison, with some suggesting 40-plus years if charged with trafficking and gun offenses. For a 21-year-old, that might as well have been a life sentence. This is where the story gets even more tragic. Because while Juice WRLD was spiraling, while he was facing potential life in prison, while he was desperately trying to get clean, the music industry was still squeezing every dollar they could out of him. The management team took him to doctors 20, 30 times and arranged for brain and heart scans to monitor his health. 20 to 30 doctor visits. They knew how bad his condition was. They had medical evidence of what the drugs were doing to his body. And yet they kept him working. They kept him touring. They kept him in the same environment that was killing him. Why? Because dead artists don't make money, but neither do artists in rehab. The intervention efforts, while genuine, came too late and weren't comprehensive enough. Other team members, including Juice WRLD's mother, Carmela Wallace, and collaborators like Rex Kudo and A$AP Bari, also attempted to address his addiction. But by then, the system had already failed him. Here's what's particularly heartbreaking. The intervention occurred about a week before December 8, 2019, with key figures including Lil Bibby, Max Lord, Carmela Wallace, Peter Gideonwo, Rex Kudo, and A$AP Bari all involved. They had a unified approach. They all agreed he needed help, and yet somehow, he still ended up on that plane. The question that haunts everyone who knew him is simple. How do you have an intervention one week and a funeral the next? The answer lies in the fundamental conflict at the heart of the music industry. When someone is worth millions of dollars, when their name alone can sell albums and fill stadiums, the pressure to keep them working becomes overwhelming. Rehab means no tours. Recovery means no new music. Sobriety means less profitable content. So instead of getting the intensive, round-the-clock care he needed, Juice WRLD got compromises. Instead of immediate rehab, he got a scheduled date 2 weeks in the future. Instead of removing him from the toxic environment, they tried to manage his addiction while keeping him productive.
You said that before his passing, he told you that he made the decision to get professional help.
He did.
Was he ready to go to rehab?
He sounded like it. And months before then, I say like in September, when I went to see him, he seemed like himself, like my baby. We just had such a good time hanging out. I brought him one of his favorite sandwiches from Chicago. So we're just hanging out, and he wasn't doing the lean anymore. I could tell it was a difference in him, that he wasn't doing the lean. I think he was still doing pills, but he told me he was ready to get help.
His mother saw the improvement. He was getting better. He was ready for help, but the system around him couldn't wait. The machine needed to keep running, even if it meant grinding him up in the process. And then there were the legal complications that nobody talks about. In October October 2019, the pop punk band Yellowcard filed a $15 million lawsuit against Juice WRLD, alleging that Lucid Dreams copied their song Hollywood Died. $15 million. For a young artist already struggling with addiction and facing potential federal charges, this lawsuit represented another crushing weight. The timing was devastating. Here was someone trying to get clean, trying to rebuild his life, and now he's facing a lawsuit that could bankrupt him over his biggest hit.
Alright,
The
chat.
stress alone could have
We
triggered
about
a
to head
relapse,
out.
but perhaps the most damning evidence of systemic failure comes from what happened after his death. After Juice WRLD's death,
We done hit
Yellowcard
the
lawsuit
2-hour
initially
mark.
proceeded
It
against
was
his
great
estate, but
being
was
here
paused
with
to allow
y'all.
an executor to be named. In July 2020, Yellowcard
Doing some editing. You know, I'm obviously gonna do what y'all saw I was gonna do, but on top of that, I'm gonna finish my food because y'all see I got like 2 plates still. I got pie. I got a third of my dinner. Like, about to sit here in the beanbag, relax, chill, turn the lights off, tight shit. Get that. Clock out. They about to clock out. Clock in. Damn. Oh, we could have been chilling like this too. This a vibe as well. We're gonna have the little light on. I mean, y'all know what I mean. But I'll catch y'all later. It was great being here with y'all. Catch y'all on the next one.